What's going on? You're now tuned in to PVD Horror. I'm Brandon, and I'm joined by my co-host Dave. And today we have a special guest, Chris Thomas Devlin. He's a screenwriter best known for his work on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, Cobweb starring Lizzy Caplan, and Anthony Starr, which is set to release in theaters on July 21st. Chris, welcome to the show, man.
So happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
I appreciate it. So, Chris, I just want to say, I noticed on your Instagram page, you like to use horror films as the titles for your captions to go along with the theme of the pictures. How did that get started?
I will point out it's not just horror movies. It's anything appropriate. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just hard to caption an Instagram picture appropriately. You get too wordy and it's a little cringe. If you don't say anything, well, then what's the context? So that was just like a fun little game I started a few years ago. Thanks for noticing.
No problem. Yeah, because I seen the Bride of Reanimator with you and your wife, so I thought that was cool. So because what was it, Halloween or something? I think that was going on, or it's just a date night.
Oh yeah, well there was the Bride of Frankenstein. Well, we went as like we both live in Brooklyn, which is it's good to live in the same city as your wife. So we just kind of went as like vaguely hipster, Brooklyn hipster, Frankenstein and his bride. And then I have a Reanimator shirt that I love to wear. I wore it on the picket line the other day, the WB picket line, and oh my god, I'm completely blanking on his name. Dave Paoli, one of the writers of Reanimator, was there. He came up to me and it was great. It's like one of the shirts that I have that I know will always get anytime I go out and I'm wearing it. There's always at least one person who will come up to me and say like, sick ass movie, dude. I think it's like that perfect like sweet spot where it's just obscure enough that like people who have seen it are like want to point it out, but still well known enough that there's enough people out there.
Sort of like the shirt you're wearing now. I mean, Basket Case, obviously
exactly.
We're huge fans, but
this is tiny. I had to quit drinking and lose about 15 pounds in order to be able to fit in it again. So this is its triumphant return.
I always tell everyone, like, when you have smaller shirts, that's a goal, you know what I mean, just to put on and say, I'm gonna get back into you one day, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
kind of smells like the back of the drawer, but it was worth it. Yeah.
We're proud of you.
Thank you, man. Thanks. That's what I do it for.
Yeah.
So you had just brought up you was out on the picket line for being on the strike on the writers' strike. We just got done talking about that like on one of our past episodes. Like, how's that been? You know, I mean, how's it been as a writer just being out and doing that right now?
I mean, I hate to say it, but for me, it's kind of been awesome. I like I said, I live in New York. I used to live in LA, but I live in New York now. And I mean, being a feature writer to begin with is already pretty isolating, and then to be one in New York just compounds it. And so just getting out there, you're in the sun, you're getting your steps in, and you're meeting people. Like I said, I just met the writer of Reanimator. So yeah, I mean, there's worse. Obviously, I kind of, I'm a little over it by now. Like there was definitely like an early COVID days aspect to it, which is like, oh, it's a school day. I mean, it's a snow day. But yeah, it's getting a little boring now, but and a lot hotter too. So I want it to be over soon. It doesn't seem like it's gonna be, because SAG has just decided to strike, which is actually fantastic. But I don't want it to be over until some gains have been made. But yeah, I mean, it's an important fight to be having, and it's a fight that it's just a small microcosm of a much larger fight that I think just the entire labor movement needs to be having right now.
Sure.
Now, like, we always have a lot of guests that come on, like actors and directors. Sometimes they start off not as horror fans, but like I said, I see the Blue Velvet poster in the back and then the Basket Case shirt. What were some of your first films that you grew up on? Like, what was your first experience like with horror?
This is a good question. My very first experience with horror, I believe, was the film Hocus Pocus, which I saw at around like 4 years old. and it terrified me. And in kind of like a classic trope that gets repeated in other media, I made my mom turn it off before the end. And because of that, it haunted me so much more potently than it would have if I had just seen it through. Because I made her turn it off. Like, I don't know how well you remember the film. The Sanderson sisters get put in a kiln at some point, which is very brutal for a kids movie, and then presumably roasted alive. And as a young kid who didn't understand story structure, I was like, awesome, okay, problem solved. But then they survived, and then Max, I think, opens the book, beam of light goes in the air, Sanderson sisters, nowhere to find them, and I was out at that point. I was like, no, can't handle this. Made my mom turn it off. And so I just subsequently for like a full year just had reoccurring, not quite nightmares, but just I couldn't fall asleep because I would just lie in bed and imagine the Sanderson sisters outside my bedroom window, which I didn't intend to make this connection when I started speaking, but now I'm obviously seeing the connections now, which is like a lot of this is where Cobweb came from, which is that was very much just based on the experience of I've never been more scared than I was as a kid lying in bed, listening to all the creaks and groans and taps of the house and just imagining what horrors could possibly be causing them. And yeah, I also had like a big thing about windows, just the idea that someone was looking at me, and there's like
I still have that.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
It's actually I have a it's kind of it's background rendering right now as an idea, but I have like an idea I've been working on a little bit that is very much about that specific field as well. So hopefully that will come to fruition soon.
Another connection to Cobweb, and I know we haven't really told anybody what Cobweb's about, but like also that idea that like if you stopped after you thought the problem was solved, you would miss a large portion of like how the movie's gonna play out. So like kind of that idea of like how you stopped watching Hocus Pocus and kind of missed. So it's like another connection there. So it really did influence you a lot, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, there's like an episode of Doug. I don't know if you guys remember this.
Of course.
Where he's like goes to a movie, and it's like so terrifying that he has to leave every time. And then like when he finally sees the end of the movie, he sees the monster and it's got like the zipper on the back, and he thinks it's ridiculous, which obviously, plays into this idea of, see it to the end, conquer your fear because it won't be as bad, but also just the philosophy. This is like kind of the first time I encountered the philosophy of what you don't see is much scarier than what you do. Val Lewton movies were like a huge influence on me, and like they are like the best thing to look at to express that idea. Like Cat People is all about just the sounds, the extra footsteps in the in the alleyway, and so that was like very influential on this movie.
There you go. So I have to say I have enjoyed both film projects that you have created so far. What inspired you to become a screenwriter?
I always liked writing. The worst answer to your previous question that I almost went with is the very like earliest memory I have of writing anything, and it was before I could even write, was like me and my neighbors writing like a horror story that was just entirely illustrations. And I remember for some reason I have a very specific memory of one. Obviously it made no sense at all. It was just this like fever dream. But there was a girl in a museum who turned into blood. That's something that has stayed with me all these years. Haven't done anything with it. But okay, that was a tangent. I always loved writing, but I also more importantly loved filmmaking. And I went to school to be a filmmaker, writer, director at Temple University. And I left with nothing but shitty movies that I directed because I was not great at the whole like being the general and commanding. It's very hard. I don't know. I so much respect to anyone who does it well. I didn't know how to convince my fellow students to be in my homework, but some other people do. But I did leave with some scripts that I had written that I really was quite proud of. And I moved to Los Angeles right after graduating with my girlfriend. She's my wife now. And got a job at a small production company. And when you're the lowest rung employee of a production company, the busy work that you have to do beyond just getting coffee and rolling calls and scheduling is reading scripts. And so you do this thing called coverage, where you have to do a book report on every script you read so that your boss can pretend that they themselves were the one who read it. And I already wanted to be a writer, but just in doing that, I feel like I developed some pretty useful skills in the idea, in just that you realize, like, when you're starting, I don't come from any kind of Hollywood family. I had no real connections. It was honestly a miracle that I got the job that I got. So when you're starting out, you kind of recognize, like, okay, if you want to, the gatekeepers to Hollywood are truly just people like me, just like dumbass, like 20-year-olds who are just trying to get through their day. And they're the ones who are like passing the script up to their boss or whatnot. And so I just kind of was like, all right, well, what do I, as the dumbass 20-year-old, want to read? And I just got, hopefully relatively good enough at writing those kinds of scripts that I sort of moved up the chain. And yeah, I feel like I've kind of lost the plot of your question. Sorry if I'm
you're good.
rambling here. But yeah, I just really loved the act of writing and making something that felt like a very compelling read itself. I also plays into Cobweb. Cobweb I wrote after I had already kind of broken through with a script called The Wretched Emily Derringer. It was about a 13-year-old girl serial killer in the 1960s who's terrorizing her small suburban town. And that's the script that got me my agent, my manager. It was on the blacklist that year. I did the whole, what they call the water bottle tour, which is where you just take a million meetings and they give you water, and then you just pretty much go on, and you most likely will never speak to any of those people again. But so I had written the script and I thought, this was my big break, and I guess in some ways it was, but it didn't make me any money at all. I was still the assistant, the bottom rung assistant at this company. And I did like the water bottle tour, and I spent like a year not doing anything that I was really proud of. I was going after projects that I had no right to be going after and that were not right for me at all. And then I moved to New York because my wife did not care for Los Angeles as much as I did. And we're both from Pennsylvania, and New York was the compromise. So I was in this strange new city, felt like my career, I had just like torched it because I left where everything actually is and all my contacts. And so I just wanted to, and like I said, I had spent this year not doing anything I was proud of or creating anything original. And so I was like, screw it, I'm just going to write. I've had this idea in my head based on, just the very primal fear of what's that bump in the night. And I wrote it in a very stylized way that I wanted to convey the tone I was going for. Like, if you're actually watching the movie, how does it feel? Like, does it I wanted to have this very like childlike perspective. And so I wrote it in this very kind of like pretentious, like I didn't use any punctuation in the action lines, and it was like written this very like sparse, almost, hopefully what I was going for may or may not have succeeded was kind of this children's poem kind of style. And that was super fun for me. It made me like remember why I loved writing. I had no expectation of ever going anywhere because it was such a peculiar script. So it's just supposed to be a writing sample to remind people in the town that I existed. And sent it to my managers. They agreed that there probably wasn't anything too commercial here, but might as well send it out. And like 2 weeks later, Lionsgate bought it, and the rest is history. That was a very long-winded answer to your question. Hope it was good.
I like to have, just the steps and everything of going into everything. So like our listeners, I'm pretty sure everybody wanted to hear that, because it takes steps, it takes time to kind of get where you need to be. And just just that path that you have to go. So that was pretty awesome that it led you somewhere, like something, your dream that you wanted to do. But you also had said that you made the blacklist and you also made the blood list. Can you tell our listeners the difference between the two and how much they impacted your career?
Yeah. So the blacklist, for anyone who doesn't, there is some confusion that I can hopefully alleviate. So the blacklist is a list that comes out. It's the best thing about working in the film industry is there's a holiday break. Basically the whole town like closes down from like the last week of December to the first week of January. And so the last Monday of official, whatever, Hollywood hours, a list goes out to anyone. It goes out on the internet. That's just a list of the favorite scripts that have not been produced within that calendar year, voted on by different executives and people in the industry. And it was started by this guy, Franklin Leonard, when he was at Appian Way, Leonardo DiCaprio's company, and it got really popular and then just became like a thing that everyone looked forward to. And as you're starting out your career as an aspiring writer, that is, the blacklist is like the mountaintop. It's a very achievable goal that still seems like momentous. And so that's what I was really going for. And then just to clear up some confusion, the popularity of that list, the blacklist, led to the blacklist website, which is also owned by Franklin Leonard. And that is a script hosting website where you can pay to put your screenplay on the website and people will read it and they can vote on it and then you can get like coverage and stuff. And I have no connection to them at all, but I will say that of all like the different kind of like break into Hollywood services out there, that is the one that I have actually seen the most success, which is still very relatively low. But anyway, so the blacklist, like I said, it's like this huge achievement when you're starting out. And then I got on there for Reg and Emily Derringer, and I thought I was set. And then I quickly was humbled, which is actually great, but it didn't feel good at the time. The Blood List was inspired by the Blacklist. There's several lists out there now. I think like the Purple List is like NYU's version of the Blacklist, and the Bitch List is for female writers. And the Blood List is for horror writers. And I was number one on the Blood List in 2018, and that was obviously very cool for me. It's good stuff. I mean, for your listeners, if you're looking to get into screenwriting and horror writing specifically, it's a good idea to just check out what the Blood List has put out every year. And it's definitely a good place to start.
So will this Emily Derringer script ever be
I
something
hope.
we could see?
I can't go into details. We've been trying. There's a most recently a very cool horror director that I'm sure you know. She's been attached. It's a tough one. It's like I said, it's a 13-year-old girl serial killer. It's very dark. It's very John Waters, David Lynch, American Psycho. It's a tough sell, but people love it.
Sure.
I love it. I strongly suspect it'll get made one day. But yeah,
the 60s, that's like a very specific but like uncharted era to do a serial killer type film.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to think of other serial killer films or slasher films that have been set in like the 60s.
Yeah, it's I hope you can't really think of too many, because
I think that makes it sound super unique. That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun one, but also I definitely did not do anyone any favors by setting it in the 60s, because immediately the budget goes up. I should not actually be saying this. Everyone listening, it is a hugely marketable movie and you will make billions if you invest. The Oscars will come pouring in.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, it was I am forever thankful to that script. It really did change my life in quite a lot of ways.
Very cool.
Well, I can't wait to check it out one day, hopefully.
Yeah, if you can probably, if you wanted to read it, I mean, I could just send you guys too, but it's
Very, very
pretty,
cool.
a lot of, almost every blacklist script is very easy to find just on the internet.
Nice. Now, you were able to write the screenplay for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 reboot or remake, which served as a direct sequel to the original film and ignored all the installments of the franchise. How did you get the opportunity to work on that project?
Yeah, so my manager John, he told me that Legendary Bad Hombre have the rights to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They sent me this one sheet that is just a it's what the name says. It's a one-page kind of description of what they're looking for, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. I don't know if this is like I have a take on this. And he's like, listen, they don't want you. They didn't ask for you. They wanted another one of my clients. They barely know who you are. But what you should do is just ignore this one sheet and go in and just, if you had the keys to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Kingdom, what would you do with that? And I was like, all right, well, that's pretty interesting. Long story short, I did that. I pitched, and to my surprise, everyone really dug what I was pitching. And so they just kept moving me up the chain until I got to Fede. And we had, this was pre-COVID, so we had a Skype, and it was like my first real Skype pitch. Everything else was over the phone. And I pitched my version, and it was one of the worst meetings I've ever had in my entire life, the complete opposite of the other one that I mentioned, because it was his one sheet that I was basically ignoring. Yeah, it didn't go that well. And so I thought that, you know, it was, I was like, all right, well, I gave it my all. But then to my surprise, the complete inverse of what had just happened. Oh, the reason I told that story is my initial pitch was the day that I found out that I did not get the other job. So I think my like devil may care, I don't give a shit about anything attitude definitely helped. But I got the job, and basically I wasn't directly told, but what people inferred is that everyone was given the same pitch. I was the only one who went in with some like wild and crazy ideas, and they felt like that would match together. But they did make it very clear immediately that we're not doing your idea. We are doing Fede's idea. But yeah, you know, dream come true to like work on such a storied franchise.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, Cobweb was an original story. I came into Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's called an open writing assignment. That's when the studio, the producers, they're the ones who are looking for a writer for a project. So I was an employee, and there were a lot of voices in the room, but it was just so cool to be able to play in that sandbox. And I'm forever grateful that, you know, I've said this elsewhere, but if anyone would have told 13-year-old me that my first produced credit was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I really would have been over the moon.
Yeah. So you were a big fan of the franchise already previously?
Yeah, I was. Again, I think I can talk about some behind the scenes stuff, I guess. Yeah, I was. I love the first one so much. It's, as Tarantino said, perfect movie. But not even Tobe Hooper tried to do that first one again. And I am a huge Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 fan. So I definitely tried to get a lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 stuff in this movie. I wanted Chop Top. I wanted oh no, I'm blanking. What's Drayton's Meat Company that played or his chili chili business. That was a huge component of my initial pitch. But yeah, no, I mean, I love them all. Like, you know, people talk about like the quality of some of them. I just think that each one has its own unique vibe that they're all great. I still haven't seen Leatherface, the newest one. I think I'm just saving it for a rainy day, but like beyond that, I'm a big fan of all of them.
So the idea to bring Sally Hardesty back, that was their idea, or was that something that you brought to the table?
That happened very organically, I think. Yeah, I think I can talk about this, and maybe I'll tell you to take it out later. Yeah, that happened very organically, where we're just, I spent a lot of time at the Bad Hombre office, and we just kind of like broke the story together. Like Fede had his like initial vision for it, and then we kind of worked together. And yeah, so there was, I can't remember how it came up, but, and I think I can say this, there was, as soon as it was, the topic was broached and we decided that we were going to do this, immediately there was like people are going to say this is Halloween, like we're just doing the Laurie Strode thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, exactly, let's lean into it. For the trailers, we want, and there was, so in the original script, there was a lot more, like she was definitely more kind of crazy cat lady, like constantly listening to the police radio kind of thing. She wasn't a Texas Ranger or anything. And then, so the movie thematically, when, I think this is okay, like film is a collaborative medium. And so like I had like my version of what it was going to be, and there's a lot of stuff I'm super proud of, and I would have loved to seen some of it go in, but there's also like stuff that was brought to the table that was not in my original stuff. So it's all a soup of other people's ideas. But I'll just talk about what my original script was, which is definitely more thematically about survivor's guilt. And so the idea was the Sally, it was more the Sally that we saw at the end of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie was the Sally that we were dealing with, but we didn't necessarily know that at first. I wanted to really lean into, like, play with the audience expectations of, okay, they're doing the Laurie Strode thing. Like, she's this like traumatized woman, and she's going back and she's gonna like reclaim her whatever, reclaim her power or whatever. But the big kind of third act twist was in classic Texas Chainsaw Massacre trope. No, actually, Sally is fucking crazy. And she is basically a secondary villain. Like, there's like the whole, like, in the original, they get Sally escapes the Sawyer house and like runs into Drayton the cook. I don't think he was called Drayton yet, but and oh no, he's taking you right back into danger. And so there was like a real in my initial script, it was Sally who actually beats Richter, the good old boy's head in with a mallet. But then so like I mentioned the survivor's guilt aspect. It was all going to be like Lila, was obviously the survivor of the school shooting. And there was a little bit more of kind of maybe it's, I don't think it was too dark in the actual script. I think it was done somewhat tastefully, but kind of like a self-harm aspect. Like there were calls between her and her therapist, who was like worried that she had gone on this trip when like she skipped another session or whatever. And it was really about how Lila, it wasn't that she felt this survivor's guilt that like all of her friends were dead and she was the one to survive. And if you know anything about survivor's guilt, there is sort of this maybe I'm going and wading into waters that are outside of my purview.
Don't worry about it. You're in we have conversations like this all the time.
But there is kind of it's the why me aspect. And really, I thought that was what was so interesting about Sally is, the Laurie Strode, like, it was very much about, if memory serves, I haven't seen the new one in a little bit, but it's like, I've been traumatized by this figure and he still haunts me. What I really wanted to explore was like, Leatherface is almost incidental. It's like my friends that haunt me. And so like the final kind of reveal, and I think it was hopefully done somewhat well, but was that Lila sees speaking of Chainsaw 2, there's a big chainsaw duel between Sally and Leatherface, and as she's watching this, Lila, who's the big climax was going to take place in an old church, and she's like crucified on the on the altar, acting as bait for Leatherface. She's seeing that Sally doesn't actually want to kill Leatherface. She wants to be killed by Leatherface. And so that was all how everything kind of like came together in the end. So yeah, that was supposed to be Sally's initial journey. But you know, long development process, and things were moving very short development process, I should say, because yeah, it was a kind of a moving train with this thing. And we had directors on board, and then Fede, and it just, you know, it gradually evolved into something else. But just to answer your, and again, very long-winded, shaggy dog kind of way, that was the initial, when Sally was initially broached, that was the initial plan.
I love that you just gave that story, because it's almost like we just got like an alternate ending or something like that. Like this is a whole different storyline that could have possibly, you know, have existed. So that's so cool to hear that. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
I hope you don't get in trouble for sharing any of this.
I don't think so.
That was super interesting. So
I think it's fine. And I like I'm really happy with the movie as is. But yeah, as the writer, of course, like you have the version of like when it was just you in the you know, the laptop, and you know, you have the scenes and images and thematic ideas and dialogue that you really fall in love with, and you know, of course, you'd love to see that realized. But you know, in my initial script, there was an RV, a luxury RV, and I wrote like a set piece in it, and with only one girl getting terrorized by Leatherface in it. And I think there's some good ass shit in that RV. But guess what? It wasn't a bus full of people, and it was Fede. He was like, you know what? We need an actual Texas Chainsaw Massacre in this. So this is how, you know, it's a collaborative medium, and you know, you're all adding ideas to it.
I have to ask you this question, or it's gonna eat at me forever.
Please.
Did you come up with the line, "You're gonna get canceled, bro"?
No, the line is try anything, you're canceled, bro. No, that was not my line. I think it's okay. I think it's okay that I say this. That's a David Blue Garcia line. Obviously that's become quite the notorious little line. And I honestly, the thing about the thing about the movie is it is a jet black comedy played completely straight. And I think you know, initially when it came out, I'm very aware of some negative reactions to it.
Those people did not understand. And you know, I think, isn't that the history of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? People not understanding
the horror genre.
Yeah, they're not understanding the dark comedy that exists within this franchise. So
yeah, but whatever. I mean, I can't say that shit because obviously anyone.
Yeah.
If I defend the movie, people were like, well.
Of course you're going to.
Yeah. But the thing is, you know, like I said, it's collaborative. There's a lot in that movie that I am not responsible for, and I love. That's the stuff I love the most. The thing about that line though is David is a very funny guy, and he had a lot of one-liners that he like kind of came up with on the day, and early cuts of this movie had a lot more of those. I forget, you know, and maybe they wouldn't have been that appropriate, but like one of my favorites was that I'm so sad we lost was when Lila comes back, when Leatherface is about to kill Melody, Sarah Yarkin's character, and she's like apologizing, and then Lila comes back with the gun. She's like, "Hey, fuck face." And then it's like he just gave Elsie Fisher this like huge hero shot, like push in. He says, "Never bring a chainsaw to a gunfight," and then immediately like the gun backfires, and it's like, and it's just like it worked for me personally. It worked like gangbusters, and there's a cut of the movie with a lot more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
gives the movie a little bit more of a tone, and so the "trying to think your cancel bro" line doesn't feel as maybe jarring as it does in the final cut. But yeah, whatever. I like that line. Like I'll admit, I didn't love it in the trailer.
Well, you know, that's the exact thing. When people just saw the trailer, they saw that line, they're like, "Oh, this film's trying to be woke." Mm-hmm. And I mean, I wouldn't say it's far from that, but it's not. It's a reference to something that was being said, like the phrase is being said all the time. But then what transpires in the bus right after that line said is like, mayhem.
Of course.
So,
Yeah. Again, it's not for me to point out, but like of all the criticisms, and some of them very fair, some of them I agree with. The idea that this movie is woke is,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? What you have no media literacy to come to that conclusion. Like, I'm a lefty liberal guy. My script probably was a lot more woke. This movie is not. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
If there's a political agenda in this movie, it's just that whatever side of the spectrum you fall on, we're all fucked.
Yes,
I think that
exactly.
is basically,
Yeah.
it's quite nihilist.
Yep.
And yeah, so the people like, yeah, that's, of all the criticisms, that's the one that I'm just like, I don't understand where that's coming from. Even the trailer, like, why would you obviously those people are getting made fun of, like, whatever. I don't need to go on
We
that
were
rant.
big fans of the film though, and we had a friend that joined us on an episode when we reviewed this, and he wasn't, after his first view, he wasn't a huge fan, and we made him go back and watch it again. We're like, no, you gotta, yeah, and I think he enjoyed it significantly more on second watch. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like just a fun ride, you know.
I appreciate that, guys. Yeah, so like, you know, when it came out, it was my first, like I said, it's the first movie that I had that had my name on it, and when it seemed like everyone hated it, and like I was getting like nasty messages, I definitely went through like a brief period of like only focusing on like the things that changed from my initial script, and like, but as time's gone on, I've rewatched it many times, and people like tell me how much they love it. I'm like, this movie rocks. Like, I'm actually just like a pure fan of this movie. It's like I no longer focus on the what ifs, like, you know, the whole Sally thing. And just like, this movie is hilarious. It moves like a motherfucker. It's gory as hell, which is for a certain type of fan, myself included, a big plus. I gotta stop because this is going to be embarrassing if I'm just praising my own movie. But,
No, you're good. You're good.
I am
You're
praising
good.
the work of the other people involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, and David especially, like, I cannot give that man enough props. Like, without going into too much behind the scenes drama, he came into a seemingly impossible situation and really knocked it out of the park. And if you guys haven't seen his previous movie Tejano, I cannot recommend it enough. The movie made it. He did everything, like shot, edited, wrote, scored it. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking he's Robert Rodriguez for a second, but made it for like 50 grand, and it looks incredible. Like, it's a powerhouse of a debut film. So you should really check it out.
Very cool.
Well, so over the years, Lionsgate had taken a break from producing horror films, but they are making a comeback. So far, they purchased 2 of your screenplays, and Seth Rogen's team plays a part in both films. How has it been working on these projects with these teams?
Oh, great. I really love everyone involved. You know, I mean, I'm a little, I'll say this, I'm a little disappointed with one aspect of Cobweb. When I had my first meeting with Nathan Kahane, the president of Lionsgate, I really expressed to him, it is very important to me that the Lionsgate logo is the stormy one from like the early 2000s in front of Saw, because like as a teenager, like Saw was, I always loved horror movies and just horror stuff in general. But I just love movies. I'm kind of a horror guy at the moment, but my taste in film is pretty vast. But it wasn't until I saw in like 2004 that I was like, oh, horror movies are punk rock as hell, and like you could do it. I was going through like a real indie movie phase, and so just like the punk rock spirit of like just doing a low budget movie with your friends and having it be awesome was hugely inspiring to me. And I loved that Lionsgate logo. I think also High Tension was probably released by Lionsgate, and that had the same logo. So it was just, when Lionsgate was the one who bought Cobweb, I was just immediately like, this feels appropriate.
Yeah.
And so Vertigo is also one of the other production companies. They were the first one involved. I obviously want to shout out Andrew Childs. He's one of the producers on Cobweb. He's an amazing producer and a great guy. And then Point Grey came on shortly after that, and they've been excellent. Josh Fagan, James Weaver. Yeah, they're just great people to work with. Obviously, super talented.
Awesome. So I want to get into Cobweb a little bit now, but I was thinking it might be helpful since our audience hasn't seen it yet. Could you just give spoiler-free kind of summary of what the film's about?
Yeah, actually, I've been seeing the materials that like Lionsgate has been putting out. It's like, that's so much better than anything I've ever said. I always just said it's about a little boy who hears a girl speaking to him from the other side of his bedroom wall. And his parents tell him it's all in his head. And he starts to question whether he can trust his parents. And it goes from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like this movie is really going to make a big splash. Like, I feel like it's a real gem of a film that's like releasing this year. So I'm really excited. I think our audience is really going to like this, and they're going to be drawn to a film like this. I was just curious if you could just explain like what influenced you to tell this story.
I guess I sort of already touched on some of it, which is just
your upbringing. Yep.
Yeah. Just something very relatable. Again, it's just like, I've been fortunate in that my life hasn't really been in danger too much throughout my life. So just still, when I think of being scared, I think about being in bed. And just being afraid of the dark. And obviously there's something about not being able to trust your parents, your caretakers. And I think there's just something really interesting about movies told from the perspective of children, because they have such little power, and the solutions to their problems have to be a lot more creative. So I just think they make very compelling protagonists. And yeah, in terms of just like, where did it come from, what influenced it? I don't know. I wanted to write something simple, and I had this style of a script in my head that I wanted to write that would be appropriate. And I also wanted to, and frankly, I feel if anything I could be the most purely proud of, I wanted to write some roles that would be really fun for actors. And I think Lizzy and Anthony in this movie are just so incredible. The tone that they are operating in is just so specific, and they nailed it. I hope the movie is very creepy. I also personally find it very funny. And all my favorite scenes are just the ones where Lizzy and Anthony are able to just kind of chew the scenery and
totally agree.
Just be alternatively menacing, but also, I mean, I just giggle like a little idiot when I watch their scenes, because I just like it's so perfect, so Lynchian, as you can.
For sure. I just love the idea that like you don't really feel like you truly know who the bad guy is. Much of it, like, you start to question things, you start to have different thoughts, and then it goes in a different direction. I just really liked that idea of like, who is the actual antagonist here? You just know who the good guy is, right? Like, the kid seems innocent enough, even though he has his moment.
Certainly.
But
and actually, okay, you actually just reminded me of not exactly a repressed memory, but I don't know if this is at all going to be a compelling story, but just something that I remember from my childhood that definitely inspired this. It's like one of the big mysteries of my life. I've already oversold it, but there was a local haunted house where I'm from in Pennsylvania, Lizzy Lincoln. It was just a made up, I know 100% they just made up this person, but like created like a mythology, like kind of a Lizzie Borden mythology. And they just made this very, middle of nowhere Pennsylvania, like very intense haunted house, because I'm pretty sure every teenager there was probably just like methed out of their mind and like did not know where the line was to stop. It was just like a purely terrifying experience, but just something that has stayed with me for years, and just terrified me so much because I still can't quite explain it, is like when you go into the house and like they tell you like the rules and like they're not allowed to touch you or whatever, and they're the guy who's explaining the kind of the rules of everything is doing his thing. I am like up against a wall, just chilling, little kid self, and I'm hearing a little girl or just like a little voice speaking to me from behind the wall in a very, very faint way. I'm just like, please help me. I'm lost. It's dark in here. I can't find my way out. No one else is acknowledging this. It never comes back. It most likely it was just some genius stuck in, like I said, middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania with no real creative outlet. Just like this is going to terrify one person and it's going to be perfect. But that's crazy. That's such a weird thing. That I don't know.
Dude, meth is a crazy drug.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that just the idea of like a little girl like just caught in the wall and like the dark and just with a little meek voice asking for help was such a, I don't know, that buries into your subconscious.
So this voice was in the wall at this place, and the main focus point was a person named Lizzy, and in your film you have a voice in the wall and you have a person named Lizzy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Did not make that connection, but yes, that is indeed correct. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I'm definitely
can you tell us what part of Pennsylvania you're from, just in case there's listeners that are curious?
Reading, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
So we got the railroad, Taylor Swift's hometown, and that is it. That and the heroin epidemic. Yeah, they graduated from meth to the opioids. It's not funny, actually. I shouldn't be making these jokes. It's a huge tragedy. But fine place to grow up.
Okay, yeah, you turned out fine, right?
I hope
you're making films and
but one's life, the arc of one's life is long. I could go real south real soon.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed because we're obviously interested to see what you have to bring, and that would be a super bummer. So
thanks, fellas.
We'll stay positive on that one. As you mentioned, like all the performances were great. Obviously, like Lizzy Caplan's name's in it. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to check this out because I absolutely love her. Performance in Castle Rock blew me away. I thought she did such a good job in that film, and I've been a fan of her for a while. But like everybody's performance in this film was stellar.
Yeah.
And Brandon, I know that you were a fan of the dad, right?
Anthony Starr, because I'm a big fan of his show, Banshee. Came out. So I was just like, when we got the email and seeing the film, I'm like, okay, searched it, try to figure out some stuff, and I seen their two names attached to it. I was like, oh, this is gonna be big, And so it was just like, I can't wait to check it out at that time. But right at this point, I think I probably watched it like 4 or 5 times now.
Nice, man. Love to hear that.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, he is fantastic. Also, I got to point out Cleo Coleman obviously does a fantastic job as kind of the one, whatever, it's not a spoiler, like one of the true moral centers of the movie. And then Woody Norman as Peter. That kid is British as hell.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's so great.
You would never have known that. That's crazy.
He's such an actor. Or such a great actor. Precocious child. Very, very funny, very smart.
Dude, and even the bullies, the kid bullies, like they're good, they're effective. Like I hated them, but you're supposed to hate them. Like really good.
Yeah, you know who Brian is?
No.
That's Gary Busey's son.
Oh, what? Okay.
You can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you say that. Yeah.
His mom plays his mom in the movie. She's only in one scene. I think this is okay to say. I didn't get to meet him. I had left set before his scenes were shot, but he's fantastic. Cool. It hit his growth spurt like immediately, it seems, because I just saw a clip of him on some Disney show or something. It was like, wow, he's a man already. Good for him.
Yeah. So I gotta ask, like, you described the experience working on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It sounds like very collaborative, like there's a lot of like influences from all different directions, but this sounds like this is more your vision. Like obviously I know there's still other influences that come in as the film is being made, but this sounds like this was more directly your vision. How was that?
Awesome. I mean, yeah. So before I continue, I take a lot of I'm very proud of a lot of this movie, but Sam Bowden, our director, like so hugely responsible for whatever is great about this movie. Just like it's the script is weird and it could have gone a lot of different ways. And I think, I'd like to say that he directed it just how I saw it in my head, but honestly, he directed it infinitely better. One of the most important things for me going into this is that I just wanted, when I was writing it, and then obviously when we were, working with producers and getting it off the ground, what was really important to me is that I just wanted something that felt unique. There's so many, horrors in such a great place right now. If I have one very minor criticism, some of them feel, there's just like kind of a house style kind of going on right now.
Yeah.
And I just wanted something that felt very much its own thing. And Sam, I personally think, delivered that in spades. The movie has just, for me, such a compelling tone, and it looks beautiful. He just was such a great captain of that ship. But yes, just to answer your question, this was a very personal story. I mean, my mom would not love to hear that their parents aren't based on my parents, but just in terms, it's just in the way that all things that like original stories you pull from various different influences from your own life. And yeah, it was the first spec script that I really sold. It was just incredible to arrive on that set and just to be in this house that had basically the geography that I had described, and to just walk around that space and be just like, I invented this. I mean, obviously so many other people actually built it, but in my narcissistic, solipsistic way, I was like, yeah, I did this. It's very cool. I am incredibly blessed and privileged to have been able to experience this.
Yeah. I just think the whole process is so interesting because like obviously there's so many players, but like without your words to like guide the vision, like I feel like, obviously they're using your words to kind of create the vision, and without those words, like obviously they'd be working with nothing. They'd be making it on their own, and like your role would
say
be
to the AFPT.
So
this is what we're striking about.
I just think that that's so amazing to like it must be so amazing to have your ideas be visuals and actually have it look the way you like kind of hoped it looked or sort of imagined it would look.
I can say with my full chest, yes, it is amazing. I am getting a call from my lawyer right now. Let me decline that. Hopefully no problems there.
I heard your interview last week.
Exactly. Shit. News is already gone to the grapevine. Legendary doesn't like my behind the scenes stories. I think I didn't say anything bad, right?
Not at all.
What was I saying? Yeah, obviously it's super cool. It's what I always wanted to do, and that I was lucky enough to be able to see this happen is something I will treasure forever. And yeah, I'm so thankful to Lionsgate, Vertigo, Point Grey. They kept me. It's very easy to kick the writer off a project as soon as you feel like their work is no longer needed. And
we hear it all the time, for sure, when we talk to writers. So it's definitely something we're aware of. Yeah.
And to have been so involved throughout the process was something I am incredibly thankful for. But also I should point out, should happen a lot more often. It should be the norm. In fact, it's crazy that it's not. But it is a rarity. And so I'm so psyched that I got to be there. Also, I think I kind of used some cheat codes, such as by writing a script as stylistically weird as I did. I think it's probably a lot harder just to bring someone in, and
they needed you around to like interpret it.
I made my job.
Where's Chris? What the hell is this?
I created the position for myself. Yeah.
I just have one last thing I want to ask you about, because I think this is an interesting thing, and you alluded to it earlier, so that's why I'm actually glad to hear you had said that. So, we didn't really mention this. I mean, it's a monster film, and I mean, we're not going to get too much into like the details of how it's a monster film, but they can be really tricky because like I think we want to see the monster a lot, but a lot of times when we see the monster a lot, it ruins it. So there really is a benefit of like leaving something to the imagination, and I think this film really balances that. I definitely don't think we see it enough where it's like, oh, and we start to like critique it and judge it, and like it loses its
zipper.
impact.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that earlier, like, kind of leaving things to the imagination and things seen like not seen on screen sometimes being more impactful. Was that intentional? And like, what is your opinion about that? Like when we oversee a monster, kind of I'm thinking of like Quiet Place 2 and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like we've talked about how collaborative the medium is. I will say, and I think this is fine, that in my initial script, the thing that you're alluding to, we never see at all.
Sure.
It is always, again, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, it is always, you see the effect that it has, and you see the environment being manipulated. But you never actually see that. But this is a studio movie. This is 2023, and you need to play to the cheap seats a little. I'm kidding. No, I think that I really love what Sam did with the final product, and I agree with your assessment that it is just enough. But yeah, I think I could say that the pretentious part of me is still like, no, you never saw the cat person and cat people. But yeah, I mean, I do. I think you see enough that I think some of the most effective like visual scares, in The Innocents, where they see the woman standing on the other side of the lake or whatever, and she's like far away, and there's just something kind of eerie about that. You can't quite make out the details, but your brain is filling in the gaps itself. That's the stuff I always find most effective, and I think we got some good stuff there.
Absolutely.
I think confusion is underrated in film. It's a hard thing to convince someone else, like, no, it's not going to totally make sense, but that's kind of on purpose. It's a hard thing to convince other people to go along with that, but fortunately I was with a lot of great collaborators that occasionally let me indulge some of my I don't know, more personal wants and desires.
Yeah,
like I said earlier, man, you have two great films that that I love. And so I know there's another project called Video Nasty. Can you talk about that and kind of give us some insight about that, or what it's about?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, that's just still, I mean, obviously taking a break as of now because of the strike. But yeah, that's another one. It's just a lot of the same people involved with Cobweb or involved with that one, and that one's a little bit more fun, just in terms of I wouldn't call it a horror comedy, but it definitely moves in that key a little bit more. And I think I could just say that's about a cursed horror VHS tape, and some people call it like horror movie Jumanji. For me, the initial conception was more horror movie Never Ending Story.
Nice.
But hopefully you'll be seeing that one soon.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. This was very fun.
Awesome. Can you just tell our listeners where they can find you, and then just remind us when Cobweb is going to be released in theaters?
Of course. Cobweb comes out the completely vacant weekend of July 21st. No other major films are being released at that time. So get your tickets now, because desperate moviegoers are going to just want to be looking for something. And so, of course, they're going to go to the theater in droves to see Cobweb. But yes, July 21st, previews July 20th. And you can find me. I've very successfully gotten rid of almost all social media except Instagram, because it's the one that I do not give a shit about. Yeah, I recently unprivated for the time for promotional reasons. So if you desperately want to get more of this Chris content, you can find me there.
Awesome. Chris, you're the best, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
This was
guys.
a lot of fun. We appreciate this.
I really appreciate it. I don't love most interviews. This one was very fun.
Awesome. There you go. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. So everybody, make sure you go check out Cobweb. We're not just blowing smoke up Chris's ass. Like we literally love this film, and I mean, we both said it before too. We're like, we love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I'm super excited. I hope you get that 60s slasher serial killer film up at some point. I would love to see that. So everybody's listening, make this happen. So, Chris, thanks again, and
thank you.
Everybody have a great night.
All right, I'm gonna go call my lawyer.